All right, Ian here with the Trails Collective or TC Live interview series. This week, I am stoked to be catching up with Tom Hooper. Tom, well, we'll get into it, but he was first on my radar just because I was tuned in, included into some of the races that he does put on that were on my radar bucket list. So I'm just going to brief intro to Tom here. So from the 603 website. After being a member of an endurance team that lacked camaraderie and excitement, Tom decided to combine his love for racing and his skill for bringing people together in order to create 603. Tom's knowledge of endurance racing, road races, and obstacle course racing granted him access to a plethora of like-minded athletes. Tom put out the call and gathered a handful of athletes with various backgrounds to create what is now 603 Endurance, which I think is a pretty solid community up there. So, Tom, man, it's good to have you on. Thanks for carving out some time tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, totally. So the various hats that Tom wears and is increasingly picking up here, we'll try to get into a little bit this evening. For any of you tuning in tonight, thanks for joining us for the TC Live series. If you have any comments, questions, just want to, if you have this impulsive need to just type something stupid into the comment bar, I'll use my judgment to either pull it through or
just do it. Let's read them all.
Read them regardless. All right. So feel free to drop them in there and I'll pull them in. But I'm going to try something that I've wanted to do for a bit, which is go through a basically like a question series with the person I'm connecting with. So tonight we're going to have 10 questions. We'll see what we get through. We'll try to roll through in about an hour and just see where the conversation goes. So I'm just going to dig into it. All right. So question number 1. This is a true or false question.
B.
No, dude, no. Right. This isn't going to work if you're just going to say B. All right, so true or false? And all right, A is all right. Let's play along. A is true and B is false. Big guy. All right. 603 Endurance's slogan is not one sport, every sport. True or false that one of the best acted sports movies of all time and the inspiration for your slogan was Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
It was B. False. It was not.
Come on. This isn't going to work either if you're going to give me the wrong answer. All right. Tell me a little bit where that slogan's coming from and what 603 is all about.
Yeah. None of this was planned. It really wasn't. It just wasn't super happy with the scene and where it was going. And a couple buddies, we thought we'd be, racing and drinking a beer in the back of the pickup afterwards. And it just took off. We had as a group, we had bought 12 shirts and 12 hats, and we sold out in 24 hours. And then that just kind of snowballed, where I think we had right around 60 people our first year. And when you come to 5K with 60 people all wearing the same shirt, same hat, I guess companies take notice. We get a phone call from Smarty Nose, and they're like, "Whatever you're doing, we want in." And then Trek Bicycle we started working with them. They're like, "Let's do it," and then it just kind of all snowballed from there.
Yeah. So which is awesome. I'm seeing when I look at some of your posts just on your own Facebook page or 603, it's cool to see so many of your singlets or shirts turn up like on the mountain or like in the races or whatever. So clearly a pretty cohesive and present community. And just reading the numbers, I think you referenced like having like 600 members or something to that effect.
Yeah, pre-COVID, there was I think it was like 608 people signed up, which was just huge. It was bigger than what we ever expected, almost to a fault where these guys buying memberships, when we go to companies for samples and sponsorship, it's much easier with 100 when we say, hey, yeah, we need 100 of something. Well, now we're going to these companies and we're like, we need 600. Hey, Larabar, we need 600 samples. It gets a little hairy. So once with COVID, everything kind of dropped back down a little bit more manageable that way.
And what do you think the biggest, I guess it's split, right? I guess there's not really a good answer to this, but the real draw or incentive, and I'm assuming there's a certain amount of people who, 603 for them is just the local area code. So it kind of makes sense. And it's this kind of representing right there in their singlet, kind of the feel of community and representing home. I would assume that's more than necessarily the swag bags, or you think swag bags are like, yeah, dude, this is cool, I'm in?
No. I think it's more, I think if we didn't even have that, I think it still would be something. It's definitely, it's the scene. The scene's fun. I
Hmm.
mean, at least when I started it, started before 603, the scene wasn't as fun. I mean, if you can remember back in, early 2000s, it wasn't like lobster rolls and beers after races. You raced, you went home. It wasn't a huge thing. And the scene has changed so much, and it's so much more fun now than it used to be.
Hmm.
So I think that, and I think we've brought people in that that weren't um, that weren't super confident in trying new things, as in snowshoe racing, trying their first triathlon, um, first trail race, stuff like that. I think that it's expanded. I mean, most of us started with a 5K, and now it's it's all over the place.
Uh-huh. And and we'll get into some of the events here, but to speak to that slogan in terms of every sport, under your 603 banner, I guess you're mostly trail running, but do you have some triathlons or snowshoe stuff in
Yeah, we
there,
have
or
a
what's
whole
your lineup?
triathlon team. Yeah, we work with Philbrick Sports in Dover. We have a whole tri team. We have all the tri gear. It's probably a team around 30-ish people,
Hmm.
and they do a little, do the circuit with the races around here.
Cool. Um, all right. So, question number two, another true and false. Uh, it's tempting to adopt the phrase "get your ass off the cliff" to accompany the plan for burro racing heat for the Kismet Cliff Race.
I'm not sure if insurance would let us do that.
Oh, come on! You don't even have to tell them about it. It's, your insurance basically just says, "Do you have any man-made like obstacles on there?" No, we're just there's
We
burros
can't
out
even
there,
get dogs into the state park. I'm not sure they're going to let donkeys go running around.
which is a good point, right? You have a Canicross event in one of your lineups.
Yeah,
Is that?
yeah. We're
Uh-huh.
actually, if it wasn't a COVID year, we're looking to start a series.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we have
It's
a couple races that are going to happen. We just don't know when right now. That are gonna be dog races.
cool, and that was something I don't know if I was really aware of that until I started the Trails Collected, and I don't know. I think it suddenly was on my radar, and I was looking for events and like, what is this Canicross? And so, what was your experience there? I mean, had you done one or just like, oh,
I have not done. I own a bulldog. He doesn't run anyway.
uh-huh.
But we have a girl that runs with us, Maureen, and she does it. And she was super adamant about doing it, and it was a blast to watch. I was really nervous the very first one we put on,
Uh-huh.
Dixon's Revenge. I didn't understand. I wasn't 100% sure how all the dogs would get along.
Uh-huh.
You
Sure.
know, you bring 35 dogs to an area, to a starting line, and everybody had a blast. It was great. We've done it for 2 years, and we're trying to do three. Do a little point system. Get some local doggy daycares behind it, stuff like that.
Uh-huh. Cool. And is that something you have to do anything different with liability? I mean, it seems like
Yeah,
that
you
would
have to
be.
get a different insurance rider, all that good stuff,
Uh-huh.
all the
Uh-huh.
not so fun stuff.
Yeah. And were people pretty into it? You got some fast people and some fast dogs out there?
We had some really fast people out there, and the and Kurgo actually, that's down out of Mass. They sent their team up. Yeah, it was a good time.
That's cool. Um, and but the question,
Here we
which
go.
spun off on the burro racing. So it was cool seeing a picture. What was your burro racing experience? Was that Colorado, or what was that all
Yeah, it was
about?
in Colorado. So it was basically just keeping 2020 as weird as possible. You there's the video of Max King and Ryan Sands out there. So you watch that on Solomon TV. You're like, all right, I got to give this a whirl. And it just happened that it all fell in into where Leadville would have been. Usually we all fly out to Leadville. This has just happened to be that weekend. It worked out pretty well. The people that own it, Amber Wan, she puts on a huge series. It is the Burro Pack Racing um, Association. It's huge. It's a real thing out there.
So how do you go from somebody in New Hampshire? You're just like, dude, I'm going out to Leadville, and does anybody have a burro I could borrow?
No, she has burros. You can rent them.
Oh, uh-huh.
Also, kind of a confusing thing. So when I signed up, I'm like, oh well, there's only 27 of us racing. This will be interesting. That's only the people that rented it. Everybody else brings their own.
Huh.
And they are, these donkeys are fast, super fast.
Yeah.
I mean, from sub 6 on the downs, to 8s on the up. It's crazy. These things are super fast.
And you get a stud burro, or were you like, you gave me a dud?
I did. I'm just bad at donkeying. So there's some of these guys hit their, smack their donkeys. I guess that's how you do it. I was more cuddling them, telling them, "Come on, buddy, let's do this." So I think that was more the issue.
It
I
worked.
had Jack, who had won the world championship in 2016.
Oh, wow.
He was not moving for me, not nearly as fast. So I blame myself for that.
And what was the distance of the race?
So it started off as a 50K. Because of COVID, it ended up being 5 miles.
Significant difference there. So how do you think 50K would have gone with your experience after 5 miles?
Yeah, it wasn't the distance, it wasn't the speed. It's just the frustration of him, the donkey, going when he wants to go. It has nothing to do with you.
That's awesome. And what did they have, like the aid stations, or they cater into the donkeys in there as well?
Yeah, they catered only to the donkeys, not much for the humans. I'm going to guess that over the 50K there would have been more. They had to take it out of the town. They had to put it on a private land up and through some mountains. It was still awesome, but it was definitely cut short.
And how many participants?
I think there was like 70 something. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 3. Another true or false. It's tempting to adopt the phrase. No, wait, that was question number 2. Moving on to question number 3. Don't mind me. At the 2020 Bubba's Backyard Ultra last person standing event, you checked out at mile 49. You could and should have gone another round. True or false?
True.
And what's going on there? 49. That's weak sauce right there.
It is. Yeah. It was cold. I just wasn't in it.
That's fair.
But then when you see who won and how long they went, I was so happy that I quit at 49.
And what, it went like 130 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and those guys still look fresh. We actually went home, showered, took a nap, went back out in the morning, and they were still out there. Yeah, they look great. Those guys were studs.
And at that point, when you go back out, you're like, I'm glad I'm not out here. Or you're like, man, I should.
Great coffee, had a bagel. It was fantastic.
That's good. And the any interest there for you on the directing front, or you're content just seeing these other people do kind of last person standing events?
No, I'll let Drummond take that one.
Sure.
He just watching the last skiers thing. He was out there for 4 days. I'm good on that one.
Yeah. And if I remember right, the one that you did in the Bubba's course, if I just remember announcing for the Trails Collective, it was a pretty cool course. It's kind of like grassy, wooded area or whatever.
It is. Drummond made it. It's funny, during the day, he had cut all the trees, and then I thought it was a little overkill of him spraying, all the roots with orange spray paint. But God, I'm glad he did. Once the sun went down, it was a whole different beast. I mean, your times went from 30-minute laps to 55-minute laps real quick.
Yeah. So that makes it, and I haven't done them. So then hearing that for sure makes it just a totally different equation. And suddenly it's like not easy rolling out there.
Yeah, it's not. It slows you down a ton, and it's not so much the distance; it's just the time, right? Because it's every lap's an hour. So it's not that it's not that you've run 49 miles. It's more just I'm just tired. I just don't want to be here anymore. It was pouring. It was like 40 degrees. It was a miserable experience in the sense of the weather. But I'd definitely do it again.
Yeah, is that the plan? Or is they?
I hope so.
Yeah, cool. All right. Question number 4. Another true or false. Your backup job is plugging in as a bartender. If last person standing events hired you to work the staging area aid station, mixing drinks for every entrant still in the game after mile 30, all would run substantially longer.
Ooh. The guy that won it was drinking Corona the whole time. So I
really?
Yes. Yeah. I think he had a beer after every lap. He had like a 12-pack. Yeah, so I have to go yes on that. I go true.
That's fair. And then as an extension, then with your answer being true, If you had to mix up an alcoholic beverage that would have extended you beyond mile 49 or anybody out there for the win, what would it have been?
Tequila.
Tequila.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Once I got warm, I was fine. I just got cold and I was like, I'm done.
Uh-huh. And I imagine you were sipping on some of that on that recent little vacation into a warm zone there.
A couple drinks.
It's fair. All right. Number 6, an open answer one. Who is Dixon, and why is he still pissed off enough to want to exact revenge?
So when we were looking at a name for this race in Rollinsford, we went to basically the Historical Society website and just started scrolling through things, being like, tell us about the town, tell us about the mill buildings. And we just sort of found this story about this guy that had owned a bar in the mill. Maine was a dry state, so people would cross the river, come over, drink. Well, there was some sort of fight, and 2 guys went in the woods, 1 came out, and that's basically where the story came from.
Uh-huh. And was that a legit image that you're using on the Dixon's Revenge?
It is not.
Not. And do you do your own artwork there for the events?
No. For that image, we had a company do it, but now we have this girl Kelly, and she's fantastic. She does all our artwork for our shirts, hats, all that good stuff.
That's cool. It's been good. I think when Kismet Cliff, I think, was the first of yours that caught my eye, but just the design was pretty cool. So, and it seems to roll through in all of your events where, I mean, you can tell you're really getting into it. You're putting your time into it. You're treating it professionally, and it's good looking stuff.
We're trying.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I said, I learn everything as I go. I mean, every day's a new day. Something pops up where I have to learn something new.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Question number 7. We're rolling through these. We're gonna have some time to put into here. True or false? It would make for a better Loon Mountain race if you were to open up the snowmaking lines to fully saturate the 40% grade upper walking boss.
How about a slip and slide on the way down?
It's good. So, I mean, that works too, right? I mean, if it's all about the after party, it seems like that would be a pretty kick-ass slip and slide at a 40% grade for a kilometer.
Right? We could time that.
You could time that. That's good. I don't know how.
How about even a tube?
Yeah. I wonder if we could pull that off liability-wise, because that would be pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
it has to be like the longest slip and slide record right there, right?
Maybe. I don't know. Right? Somebody could look that up. Any of you out there tuning into this episode right now, if you could Google us the world record slip and slide and chime in, that would be outstanding, because I think we have something here that we can create a Northeast mountain slip and slide series. There's one, I don't even know what it's called, one of those quality shows somewhere on the interwebs. Maybe it's like YouTube or something like that, but it's like this showing these off kilter or like niche sporting events, and one of them's like frog racing, and I don't remember what the others are, but the one that I watched with my daughters a couple months ago was this, I don't remember where the town was. I think someplace over in Europe. I don't know, maybe it was like Ireland or something like that. But it was like this downhill cheese rolling competition. I don't know if you did see that. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
But these people are just heaving themselves down this ski slope, or that's just not even a ski slope, but this like hillside with all these hummocks and just doing like cartwheels, and people just like breaking stuff. And so I imagine, that just looked awesome. So if we could do something like that, like in the Northeast,
European, that's way different.
Yeah, they do get away with more crap like that.
Get away with everything.
Yeah, that's fair.
Even West Coast gets away with everything compared to the Northeast. We ran the rut. I don't even know how that's allowed. They would never let us do that here.
Just because the technical like scree fields, or
when you're going up Lone Peak, it's like a 3,000-foot drop on either side at one point, and I'm like, they would never let us do that.
Yeah, and speaking of that too, so one of my events with Breakneck Point, it's got a really technical climb with, I don't know, it's like 1,000-foot cliff exposed like line where there's recreational hikers that are totally out of their shouldn't be up there. They're doing it all the time, there's really high risk, and it's part of that. The exposure is what makes it so, I guess, real or raw or whatever. But to your point, yeah, it's tough to find that in the U.S.
Hmm.
For one, access to the lands, two, for not just access but permitting entities, and then the liability of it is pretty crazy. Um, Getting back to that though, it looks like Ben, what'd you come up with? Ben Mazur from, I don't know whether you know Ben, Tom, but he
Yep.
is from the PA trail scene. He directs, I think, at least a few races in the Allegheny Mountains area. One's called Rock and the Knob. Some pretty cool ones there, but 135-foot tall Daredevil's Peak of Perfect. It is tallest water. We're not talking water slide, man. I want you to, Ben, get back to that Google and find me the info on the actual slip and slide. Um, the Yeah, but some of the exposure, it's just tough to find. And to your point out there, I mean, you right, maybe you'd have something like the rut, and I haven't run it to be aware of that exposure. And then maybe you've got like uh the mountain marathon like up in Alaska,
Hmm.
but it's, I don't know, it's tough to access those. How about, so what you're, so you being you're a New Hampshire native, right?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So, and you know, obviously the New Hampshire as well as anybody. I mean, you're pretty savvy. I mean, what's permitting like for you in terms of scouting out courses, creating events, access? I mean, you've got a lot of public land up there and a lot of pretty raw peaks, but it seems like a lot of it wouldn't necessarily be accessible to you.
Yeah, a lot of the White Mountains we can't do things. Kismet was the only race in the White Mountains for a long time. Now they're starting to open up things a little bit more, but you still have some like wilderness sections that they don't allow more than 10 people at a time. So there's no way to do a race in those sections. It would be unbelievable. We've had the conversation with them saying, listen, is there a 1 day permit? What can we, is there a way to do this? I mean, just because we have so much, um, it's so different than other places, right? You go out west, yeah, you're at altitude, but it's not the same as if you were to run the Pemi Loop,
Uh huh.
something like that. It's just completely different.
And so there you can't. It's not like you can even get away with the COVID-induced like wave formatting. It still considers it a formal event, and just you can't touch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yep.
they don't want any more than 10 people in that section at one time in a group. I guess they're nervous that if we did go off, they would bunch, and I guess that right then and there, it's a problem.
Uh-huh. And so, and Cammy, thanks for weighing in there. Jordan, Guinness Book of World Records, 2015, 2006 feet.
Jesus.
Well, you can beat that, I guess, right? So if you get a
Yeah,
1,000 kilometer for the upper walking boss at 40% grade, you're right there. Dude, you could take that.
we could do that.
And that's private land, right? Or what's Loon
Yeah,
Mountain on?
yeah. That's
That's not state property?
nope.
All right.
You're getting bib number one.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Uh, I may go with some quality elbow pads, helmet,
Yeah.
really decked out, but I'll take that. Um, yeah. So then Kismet though. So Kismet as an example, you get some good exposure there, right? And you're up
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean that's probably, even if it wasn't our race, I'd still say that's the most scenic race out there. I mean, you're going up and over the Cathedral Ledge, you're over White Horse, and then you're on both moats, so you have 360 views everywhere.
Hmm. And I'm pretty stoked. I was so one of the races that I was bringing that I'm bringing back this year was kind of a cult classic, the Virgil Crest Ultras, and I had scheduled it for. It was always traditionally September 18th weekend, and so I think initially I'd signed up for Kismet
Hmm.
just because it's been a bucket list race, and I was like, crap, I got to do Virgil. It's gonna be the same weekend, and I ended up bumping Virgil a week forward just because, well, for a couple of reasons. But in there, it was very selfishly. It's like there's some other cool races out there that I want to do, and we're just going to roll with September 11th because I got the option. But it looks really cool as a course.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting course. It's got some really steep climbs. It's got some really. I think the down might be tougher than the up.
Uh-huh.
You have to be really good at down if you want to go fast.
And
Um,
just and the go fast, but also one of those where just because you're risking injury or just
yeah, you could get really hurt if it's that steep going down it.
Yep. And and I'm stoked, but just for the beta, for those of you tuning in, so the Kismet Cliff Race. Well, actually, tell the listeners, some probably your posse out here, but for those who are not, like Ben coming from the PA scene, who I know until I again really started digging in, Kismet, even though you're not too far, right up in New Hampshire, wasn't necessarily on my radar. But once I did find it, I was like, wow, this race looks beautiful. So just tell the listeners what the Kismet Cliff event's all about.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a Beast of the East. So it's a 13-mile race. We also have the 5-mile race. Basically, right now, it's just look somebody to break 2 hours. That's the what we're kind of shooting for right now. I mean, David Sinclair. I mean, he's super fast, and he was off by 2 minutes. So I mean, I don't know where you'd make up 2 minutes. It's yeah, I have no idea where somebody that fast is going to make it up. I'm not in that league, so I can't I can't pick and choose where I'd go faster. But yeah, it's 4,300 feet of vert in 13 miles, and it's a beast.
And then you've got the mini or the 5-miler in
Yeah,
the
the
mix as well.
5-miler. Yep. So that basically goes up over Cathedral and sort of Whitehorse, and then comes back down and then around Echo Lake. It's all based at Echo Lake State Park. Right, it's the lake that's right below the mountain.
And you had a pretty, speaking to David there, but when I tuned in, and I think when I was announcing it last year, I guess, yeah, because you ran it in 2020, right? You did get it off.
Yep.
Yeah. You had a really fast field on that front end.
Those OCR guys surprised the hell out of me. Like Ryan and Joshua and all those guys, they flew. They absolutely flew. I mean, I knew they were great athletes. I didn't expect them to push as hard as they did.
Yeah. And what's the lineup looking like for this year? Equally, I mean, are you holding a competitive field there?
Yeah, I'm sure we will. I think there's only like 100 people signed up right now. So I'm going to guess that people are kind of still sorting out if they can travel, if they can't travel, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that we get a lot of people that sign up once the vaccine and everything else comes out.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Question number 8. Open answer. For you, the most beautiful trail section to run in New Hampshire.
Ooh.
Or you can obviously go top 3. But what are some of your favorite in terms of if I've got a free weekend, and which you probably don't all the time, but or you've been up there with a friend, or at some point you're just like, man, this is an incredible section. And I know there's a lot of it in New Hampshire, but if you narrowed it to a few that would be like destination weekends for people.
Most of them, I couldn't even tell you where we're at, because Drummond usually takes me up into some crazy spots. Yeah, I mean, in Jackson, anywhere in Jackson, all through those mountains are fantastic. On the backside of Wildcat, Attitash, yeah, anywhere up there.
And you're just getting good exposure and just up there.
There's just nobody up there. It's wide open, and once you get away from the tourist traps, some of these trails are just they're empty.
Did you experience the same thing this past year with COVID? It seems like some of these areas were really, I mean, the population or the numbers out there were just through the roof, and the impact and all that. Were you seeing the same thing up in New Hampshire, even in the areas that were pretty sparse?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it wasn't ideal. I don't know. I don't really want to, everybody was doing what they needed to do to survive, to mentally cope with it. So I think that maybe it was a little overrun. But we made it. We've turned the corner, and now hopefully it'll be back to what it was before, where it's a little less used.
Yeah, and that's a mixed bag, right? Because you hope that people stay out there, hope they find the new kind of love, passion, the experience, or whatever.
Totally, and I think that is happening. I think that the people that didn't hike before are sticking with it. just going through all, the Facebook posts and everything like that. There's so many winter hikers this year, things that I've never seen these people winter hike before, and they're posting every weekend about it. So that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yes, that's going to be your 603 community is going to go from 609 to easily 612 right there. No problem. Mm-hmm. All right. Another open answer one. So you've occasionally headed out of the region for endurance or mountain efforts, including Leadville and the Rut, which we commented on briefly.
Yeah.
Any out of the area events that have been bucket list for you that you still like, man, I saw a picture of this event or race, or it doesn't even have to be a race, but I really want to get out there and do whatever.
Yeah, I've never been to run through Utah, but we have a bunch of friends that go out there, and they say it's unbelievable. Went out to Tahoe for the Tahoe 200 to pace. That was fantastic. Everybody says Pennsylvania. I still have never been down there for a race, so I would definitely do that.
We definitely need at some point. Maybe it's I was about to say definitely need some sort of intentional kind of mixing or kind of shuffling the deck, so to speak, and to get. And this is part of my intent or hope for the Trails Collective as well. Was it's a comfortable place, right, to be in your bubble. And for those of us in the Northeast, there's so many beautiful pockets and great trail communities, and there's not necessarily a need. You've got what you need in your backyard, so to speak, and. But when I guess the more that I did get out or did start getting out more, you just realize how many just amazing events are out there. So like years ago, part of the inspiration was, I think years ago, one of my races, Cayuga Trails, I think Trail Runner, I don't know, had it as like one of the most scenic races in the country or something, one of those like articles or whatever, and which I'm working on those articles as well. So not knocking that article. I think it's fun and it tunes you into some cool races out there. And I think initially I was saying, all right, it's fun to, I guess, get that coverage or press and can market it to a certain extent, and probably used it like on the website verbiage. But then I kind of started getting uncomfortable because I just felt like it was there's so many, I guess it's such a subjective thing, but there's so many beautiful spots out there. And I think at the time I started going back and forth a little bit with another RD in the Southeast who was making just all these like crazy claims of my race is the toughest in the East of the Rockies or most gain East of the Rockies. And I'm like, buddy, man, I'm running the numbers and I can tell you that it's not. Or like, and so then I just started becoming, I think, aware of how much more was out there and getting out of our own bubbles. And that something that I'm working on right now, which has been a deep dive over the past couple of weeks, which thanks for giving me some of the beta information as well for your races. It's just really digging into events and their metrics. And so I think I've run, 150 races in the Northeast, processed their course logs. A bunch of them I freehand mapped if they're events that they're like, I don't even know what you mean by GPX, or we don't do that, or it doesn't exist, and so some cases I've got just like a hand-drawn course like on a map that somebody takes a picture of and sends me, and so I'm just freehanding it, and then the log will be out there. But send them all through the 3 different mapping softwares, and then took the average elevation gain and then divided it by miles, and basically just trying to get like apples to apples measurements as opposed to not. Like there was one race in particular down in Virginia where it was like top of my list in terms of kind of the toughness category in a certain distance. It's like, wow, their metrics are just nuts and it must be really technical. And so you get these kind of superficial claims or like face values, and then you dig in and I'm like, well, it just turns out that like the software that they're using is like not even like close to accurate. And then I started watching like videos of like the course, and I was like, it's not really that technical at all. And so I think it's very, I'm like, I kind of want to know the truth. Stop keeping the truth from me. Tell me what's the actual toughest, and I'm going to compare it apples to apples. So it's interesting to run all these through and to look at something like Kismet and still have it, up there in terms of elevation gain per mile. And so that's a project I'm taking on right now, but otherwise it's kind of like the Wild West out there. And
I can't wait to see this. This will be interesting.
Yeah, hopefully it is. I mean, there's
as we do them all.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it would be fun to create just like a and this would be to your point of getting down to PA. Like here are some of the the PA races with some pretty equally crazy metrics. And, here's what people think in terms of the scenic value and exposure. And so here it becomes a bucket list. So you could do I'll create them. I'll create different tiers of top 25Ks. And top is a tough, I guess, and here I'll need feedback too, right? Because top is not the word to use. It's a very subjective thing. People love their local races. They trail in their backyard, maybe like their happy place. And but it's going to be interesting, I think, to be able to hopefully give us all a little bit more exposure to what's really out there in that.
Now, how do you equate, or how do you put something in for terrain versus just the elevation versus mileage?
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, you run 13 with 5,000 feet of vert in Colorado, or some kind of a horse grade trail versus granite rocks and roots.
Yeah.
And how do you do that?
Yeah. And so when I'm creating, so I've started, now that I think I have there's no doubt there's going to be some that I missed, but I think I have a fairly good data set at this point. I think I captured a lot of the races out there and ran them through and narrowed it down to, like, for the 50K category, which I'm pretty close to having like the article set in terms of information plugged in. I went with, like, which is maybe way too many, but it felt fun to go with a 50K association where I have the top 32 events in terms of elevation gain and elevation gain per mile. And then what I was doing wee hours of the morning a couple nights ago was reshuffling the deck based on like that ranking. So it would have been one thing to just go through and rank them per elevation gain and my thought on what area of the country they're in terms of technicality, to your point. But one of the things that I was also plugging in was I was trying to give, I guess, the viewers a visual of what these races are about, and to hopefully do my part in creating more exposure for instance, the events like yours up there in New Hampshire that wouldn't have been on people's radars. I'm also going through and looking or just searching YouTube for anybody who's put together a video like on that race. And that's been really insightful too. Part of shuffling my deck the other night was me watching these videos. And again, I had this preconceived notion in my head of, it's going to be in Virginia or it's going to be wherever. And it's going to be this endless field of technical rocks, whatever. And it's just going to suck. But, and once you start watching these videos, you're like, it's not like that at all. There might be some sections of technicality, but it's not. And so that was really insightful to help me then drop it a different place in the ranking. And when I saw videos that were maybe more exposure, I was like, then I'm going to push it this way. And so it's not necessarily, if you have more elevation gain per mile, you're here. And if you have less, you're here. It's also weighing a couple factors. Like on the 50K front, one of the ones that I have, I think ranked in third or fourth, maybe has half the elevation gain of some of the other 50Ks out there, but they also run it in February in New York. And so it's when you get then 6,000 feet of gain over somewhat technical terrain and then add the snow, like that just becomes a beast. And suddenly the finish times are like 3 hours longer than like even technical 50Ks. So I'm trying to factor in from what I can glean from elevation, technicality, season they're running, and any other conditions, and then ranking them that way.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's been kind of fun, but Kismet remains up there. And then the one that'll be more interesting will just be trying to come up with the scenic ones, because there I'm reaching out to people like you who I know have been all over their respective locales and tell me, like, in your opinion, what's the most scenic event in New Hampshire, for instance. Reached out to a friend, teammate Ryan Welts, and said, New Hampshire, knowing you've been everywhere, what do you think? And I think I asked him about Chikura, and he thought that it was amazingly scenic. But he's like, but Kismet, they're probably pretty close. They're in metrics and scenic value, and so it's cool to hear from people on the ground too to gauge the scenic value.
Totally.
Yeah. All right. So the one, and then actually use this just because I want to make sure that, so Kismet was one we talked about. Just run through, you've got another few events just for those who may not be in your immediate community. What else does the 603 lineup have? Just run through them, kind of what the rough metrics and kind of
Yeah, so
what they're like.
Dix's Revenge is half marathon and 5K with the Caney Cross. Loon Mountain Race, which is the 6.6 up Loon. Then we go to Ragged, which is the 3-day stage race and the 50K, which is the USATF National Championship this year. Kismet, and then Vulcan's Fury.
Mm-hmm.
There may be 2 or 3 extras that if we can pull them all off. It just depends on this weird year.
Yeah, and the two newest in your lineup. It's Vulcan's Fury and Loon. They were what initially acidotic events.
Acidotic. Chris Dunn, who you had on before, he had given me a call and is kind of going a different direction right now. So he said, is this something that you would be interested in? Absolutely. We when 603 started, we kind of jumped in ground level on Loon as a team running it, and that's always been our one of our biggest staple get together races where we would all go and then have a huge party afterwards. So yeah, that was one of our favorites. So when he gave us the opportunity for that's a no brainer.
Yeah, and I was wondering that too, kind of what the angles were. I mean, Chris had mentioned that that he was stepping back a little bit from the RD throttle. Sounds like he got some other things going on, but just and I had seen in a bunch of the photos at Loon, yeah, for sure, the 603 brand out there. So just wondering about that trade-off. But that's awesome, right? I mean, you're picking up kind of a mountain northeast staple.
Instantly, yeah. I mean, Chris and Paul aren't going anywhere. They'll be there this year too. So they're not going anywhere. I told them that was one of the staples or one of the things. If I did take this over, they needed to help out this year, just because I love learning from those guys. They're the pioneers. They started this for New Hampshire, so I'm more than willing to learn from those guys.
And Vulcan's Fury I'm also, I think I'm registered for that as well. And I think registered my family as well. I know I registered my daughter for Kismet as well, but I think my full family is maybe, or 4 to 5 of us are registered for Vulcan's Fury, I believe. And I think I also asked 4 other people from here to make the trip up. It's October. Am I remembering that right? Yeah. And that one looked like a beautiful, beautiful course.
Yeah, absolutely. It's at Pawtuckaway State Park. That's actually one of the places that we, as just training, we run there quite a bit. Brandon Newbold, that's his backyard. That's his training ground right there. So it's a good place. It's an old volcano. It's got some tricky terrain, but it also has a lot of runnable stuff as well. So.
And that was one I was also mapping. I think when you're on vacation, there's a pretty clear map on your website, but I was going through and mapping the terrain as well. It looked like a pretty good blend of terrain.
Yeah, dirt roads, Jeep trails, and then a lot of single track. Yeah.
And Alex, thanks for tuning in there. So Alex, I'm guessing you guys have not connected. Alex has his own event company, Athletics Equation, based in Alex, you can correct me. I think most. Well, actually, all in Virginia, I think, except just one in New Jersey. So 2 dudes are connected, and we still will have to flush and trade communities there. Yeah, and so in your lineup, any that you're most stoked about? Like do you run your own races?
No,
too much going on.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Totally. Yeah, neither do I. I feel like you got to be there to put out any fires that they come up, and I can't split my mind away from. Make sure everything's going the way you kind of.
I'd have a heart attack.
Totally.
Even with the best volunteers in the game, I still have a heart attack. But I mean, which one do I look forward to? I mean, that's Ragged. Ragged will always probably be my favorite. I mean, was
Ragged your first in your lineup that you took on?
We have a road race. It's called the Summerfest 10K. That's in Dover. That's not going to happen this year. I don't think Dover's ready for that. Just coming back from COVID, I don't think that we could pull that off safely, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Sure.
That was our first. But Ragged is just so much fun. from when I used to run in it to race directing. I mean, I still talk to all of those people. When you spend 3 days with those people, and in the dirt, you form a bond that is it's like nothing else.
And so that was one that was going before you took it
Yeah,
on as an RD.
yeah. In 2014, it was called Emerald Necklace. Chad Denning was the RD, and
Ah,
he passed away.
yep.
And then the the group or the how do I want to call this? The organization that was kind of behind it asked me if I wanted to take it over. So I
Hmm.
said absolutely. It needed to continue. That section of like that loop, nobody uses that loop. It's crazy. It's so untouched on I would say 50% of the course is um, these guys Andy and Charlie and Chris. They take care of that course year round, but nobody uses it. It's 80 miles of trail and it's very unused.
And so is that a dedicated loop? Like it's a dedicated own trail?
Yeah, it's actually a group, the SRKG. It's the Greenway. They have a foundation. They raise money. They have a book and maps, and they have a whole organization for it. Um, it's interesting. It's all, well, not all. Most of it is on private land. You go through homeowners' backyards. They give permission for this. Um, it's I think it's very complex in how they go about doing, putting this 80-mile loop together. So it takes a lot of people, I think, to really to bring it home and make it possible.
Yeah. And that was before you stepped in as RD, that was just the 3-day stage race, and then you added the 50K?
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So this is a long, complicated story, but anyways, yeah. I said, listen, because the stage race isn't really, it's not a moneymaker. I mean,
Mhm.
it runs right on the ragged line of can we pull this off?
Yep.
And so basically, I said, listen, like you need to have something else. There has to be
Mhm.
something that makes this so it can survive. You got to pay for the website, you got to pay for this, that, and all the admin stuff. I'm like, there has to be something attached to it,
Mhm.
and they agreed to it. We kind of worked out all the logistics of it with busing people from the finish line to the starting line in the sense, so when you're done, we don't want to have to, nobody wants to get on a bus after running a 50K. So we
Mhm.
did it backwards. We got you show up at Ragged Mountain, you get bused to the starting line, and then you run towards the finish. So when you're done, you have your gear and all that other stuff, and then we have a cookout and um, have a good time on the mountain.
And the format is that one, that's just 3-day broken up, right? It's not, I know in the 50K, it's not like you can just opt to run the full loop straight through in one shot as part of
Correct.
the race. Yeah.
Yep. So
Yep.
stage racing is really different than, so say like an ultra, where 100 mile where you just kind of slow and methodical, right? Stage racing, you're still, I mean, your first day, you have to kind of figure out how fast can I run 23 miles where I can wake up and do it again.
Mhm.
And then you have to do it again. So you kind of have to hold a little back while still being competitive. And you got to kind of figure out that line. Um, it's, it's a completely different beast. Like
Mhm.
when you look like Trans Rockies, like same thing. You got to figure out how fast you run where you aren't so sore, where you can do it for them for it's 5 more days, right? So it's a really good time.
Yep. And
I mean, the
the
racing is a small portion of it. It's the recovery that's that you're
the
there.
big challenge,
You might only do like 8 hours of 7 hours of running or 5 hours of running.
which is a
It's
crazy concept, right? You're saying you may only do 7 or 8. Yeah. Yeah.
only, but yeah, but after that, you know, it's it's what are you eating? What are you drinking? The first year I did it, these two Australian guys were sleeping with their legs up. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was gonna do.
Uh-huh.
You learn as you go. In something like that when you the first time you do a stage race.
Uh-huh. And the 50K format, again, it's just, again, interesting to be mapping this stuff out. But you said it's kind of a deceptive course. It runs a little bit long, and you start with some,
It runs
uh,
long, but it's also built backwards. It's built more like a tractor pull, right? So it's really easy in the front, and then it gets really difficult at the end.
mhm,
So it's people burn out. The first 10 miles you can haul,
uh-huh.
but it's it'll bite you if you do. And it's in August, so I mean it's
Yep.
hot, it's humid. Um, yeah, it's it can eat you up.
Cool. That's good. All right. Let's see. So I want to let's get into question number 10 yet, and that'll be talking about that new venture. And then if there's any of the people tuning in out there, thanks for joining us this round. So this is going to be a 10-question format. So I'm going to get into number 10, but we can for sure take tangents. So if any of you are out there listening and you have any comments, any good stories that you want to share on Tom, or put him on the spot and ask him some questions, now would be the time. So it looks like Ben's going to start incorporating the tractor pull into his Pennsylvania races, maybe. All right. So question number 10, true or false? It would be a good idea to create a line of apparel with custom area codes and designs associated with those area codes.
God, I hope it's true, or I wasted a lot of time.
How would that go? What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, it started just from from us losing people to life, in the sense of hey, they were a 603 member, but they moved to Orlando. Hey, they life took them to DC. Whatever the thing was, they're like, oh, you should start this. You should start this. Well, after 10 years, it got the voices got so loud, we kind of had to do something. Like, all right, well, we've got the designs, we've got the the way to do it. We just need to buckle down and then like I said, for artwork, we had this girl Kelly, and she killed it. She did more than we could ask. So yeah, it's hopefully hopefully it turns into something. The right now we launched like kind of a pre-thing in February, just to test the logistics of it. How does it work? Some people ordered. How long was it taking? Was everything getting there on time? And everything ran super smooth. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next couple months.
And this is made to order stuff. It's not like you're just sitting on a ton of inventory from area code.
It's all custom made per order. And
And
that's basically, I mean, that's where it had to go, because as a race company, we don't have money to sit on 396 area codes times 15 different designs times long sleeve shirt, short sleeve, singlet, stuff like that. So this is how we had to do it.
And so for those who potentially are listening in and can look it up, what's the name of the entity again that they'd look up to find it?
Area Code Endurance.
Area Code Endurance.
Yeah.
Yep. And do you have a lot of the designs pretty much already worked out, or you kind of take submissions from those areas, or you look them up on your own, or?
No, so they're all, we basically took what we had for 603 and just cookie cuttered them to launch this. But I think that we're going to start working with more state specific stuff. For when we all go to the Boston Marathon, we do a Boston Marathon jersey. Has either the streets of Boston or something like that. So we'll start dabbling maybe in more area specific stuff for some of the larger cities.
Cool. Well, I look forward to checking that out. I already did check it out when you sent it through, but I'll stay tuned into the designs and try to. And so, are you open to? So, somebody is like, I would think this design would be cool for my area code. Can you consider it, or is it not really?
Yeah, we're open to anything.
Yeah, you may just suddenly get 9,000 requests, which is a good and a bad problem to have. And then you're just gonna have to be like, yeah, dude, that's a terrible looking design. I don't know what to tell you there. But I look forward to checking that out, and hopefully it works. There was a shoe company, I think they're still in business, Carson. I don't know if you ever heard of Carson Footwear. Guy's name is Everett Carson. I think if I remember, he's out of Oregon, either Oregon or Washington, but started his own somewhat custom shoe company. It's pretty much a one style shoe, fairly minimal underfoot, and custom in the sense where you could put in your custom orders on the upper for the shoes. And they had some stock designs, which were kind of cool. I think one that I got was one of their factory seconds or whatever. They make them in-house, but a factory second had a cool gecko design up top. And initially I wanted to have size runs made up for Red Newt Racing and the store. And for whatever reason, he wasn't biting. It's this model where you can put in custom orders, but I just kept getting kind of out the back. Like, yeah, we'll get to it, buddy, at some point. But I think they're still in business. And so it's cool to see that also custom where, you could go the 603 endurance footwear line as well.
Yeah, it's usually the problem is with minimum quantities, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get 500 emails a day about, hey, you should buy this gear. But I mean, it's who needs 500 pairs of socks? Who am I gonna do it?
Yep.
Some of the stuff is so unrealistic unless you have a storefront. It just doesn't make any sense.
Uh-huh. Especially when I was doing that, as as an RD, especially after last year. I've got 8 big boxes of bags that I couldn't use, custom bags for Cayuga Trails that have just been waiting, or I've got 1,000 Patagonia shirts in my printer's shop or whatever. Like, you end up just sitting and hopefully we're not going to eat this stuff, but we'll get a chance to use it. But it's just that big risk and logistic.
We got super lucky last year with Ragged. We worked with John Mortimer from Millennium Running, worked with the task force for reopening, and we were actually able to get off the race that we had bought the gear for. So we got super lucky on that one.
Uh-huh. And projections for this year, in as much as we can know so far, in terms of getting the events off?
Oh yeah, I think Dixon's is 50-50, but the rest are 100%. I don't see any issue with any of those.
Cool. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, anything else you want to put out there at all? Anything that you got coming up, or that you want to promo or plug or anything?
No. I'm just ready to get back to racing. I didn't have a race on the schedule for myself. That's my.
What are you doing? What are you?
No, I don't have any.
You don't have.
We were signed up for Run Amok, and that got postponed.
Yeah. You pushed that back to October or something?
Something like that. And that's a whole nother can of worms of everybody pushing their races back. So every weekend is going to be jam full with, 3 or 4 races a day. I think it's going to be, I don't know. It might hurt some races. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Especially after year 2. I mean, it gets to your point. Some of them who didn't get off last year will get off this year, but in pushback format. But
yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to affect some races. I mean, if some races go to 50% capacity because of their runners or other races, that's just as bad.
Mm-hmm.
If you can have a solid weekend with all of your racers, that's fine. But if you have races, stacking each other on the same day, I think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, well, hopefully it works out. I'm excited to get up to do at least one of yours, if not 2 this year.
What's your first race?
Stoked. What's that?
What's your first race?
Oh, that I put on or that I'm doing?
That you're doing.
That I'm doing. The first one, let's see, it was supposed to be Naked Bavarian. It's one down in PA, pretty mild course, nothing mountainous, just an early season one, which was supposed to be February. They just pushed it back into one to blend it with one of their other events into March 27th. And then I signed up for 2 on the same day, which was the Mount Tammany 10. Alex is on here. Signed up for his. He just is pushing back there. I think just saw the email today for October 30th, pushing back on that one. That's a really burly event there. It's down in the Delaware Water Gap, which may not mean anything to you up in New Hampshire, but it's a pretty steep pitch, and it's basically like 40 miles with, I think it's like 12,000 feet of gain or something like that. It's pretty healthy. But I was signed up for that one and another classic one, which I've not done before, called the Hat 50K down in Maryland. both are the same day, and I was just assuming that one of them wouldn't make it through, but the other one would. But neither one of them made it through for that weekend, so that's out. And then the Naked Prussian, that March pushback in PA, and then one that's long been on my radar as well will be the next in the lineup, which is Promised Land down in Virginia, which is a 50K, and that was one that I was in the mix for last year that got canceled and rolled into this year. But that one is also pretty solid elevation gain, some technical terrain in there, and also just really, I think, beautiful course and classic David Horton race coming out of Virginia. And then I've signed up for a bunch more, but that's how the season's supposed to start. I'm waitlisted or on the wait list for the 50K and 100K at World's End, another pretty beautiful one down in PA to have on your radar. Again, signed up for Kismet, Vulcan's Fury, signed up for the West Virginia Trilogy. This was, I don't know whether I'll pull this off. this was one where I think I had signed up, or I'd rolled over on the West Virginia Trilogy, and it was like that's also a 3-day format where they do, I think it's like a 50K, something like, I forget what the format. It's like 50K on Friday, 50 mile on Sunday, maybe like a half marathon, or 50 mile on Saturday, maybe a half marathon on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I had signed up for Vulcan's Fury and then forgot that I was rolling over for Trilogy. So right now I'm contemplating whether I'll do the 50K down in West Virginia with West Virginia Trilogy on Friday and then drive up, picking up my family halfway. I think it's like a 12-hour drive between West Virginia and Vulcan's Fury. So I'm supposed to do those back to back on a Friday and a Sunday, the same weekend. So we'll see if that happens. But so it should be a pretty busy year between my own and putting those on. But I'm still not really holding my breath for any because I'm just living day to day, week to week, and who knows what's ahead.
But all yours will go off.
Hopefully, we were able to get I think 4 of the 6 or 5 of the 7 or whatever it was off last year, and so I guess we've got the precedent. I guess the format seemed to work and seemed to go off pretty safely. So I think that they'll be okay. The only one I'm still waiting to hear back on, which I just can't get a response from Olympic Regional Development Authority, is Whiteface. I was hoping to have that registration up this past weekend, but I pushed it back a week. But we're still hoping to run that with a new mountain format. And that was one I had switched to try to dovetail into the New England Mountain Series, which you're a part of now with Loon. And I was trying to get the date to work perfectly or settle in with that series. We had to shift it because my co-RD Sarah Kais she's doing the Western Leadville double this year, but she wants to be out in Leadville I think the first week of August.
Trying to. There?
What's that?
Will you go out there as well?
I won't go out there as well. No. No, I'll be stoked to see her run both of those. I don't know. Leadville, I know is like Leadville. You must, I imagine, had a pretty good experience out there. It seems like a really kind of family feel and big community. Yeah.
We'll be there this year. One of the 603 guys is running, so we'll be out there pacing and crewing.
Cool. Yeah, it looks like one of those that's, despite its acquisition, despite its growth, people still just really love the environment and
just the town,
the feel.
The town is awesome. The town's so movie-esque. You know what I mean? It's one little street with a saloon. There's not much there. It's just kind of an old mining town. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. So we'll be members of our team out there, but I won't make that trip out. But hopefully it's a blast. And you all driving out? Are you flying out? What's your plan?
We'll fly out. We'll do Ragged, and I think there's a week, and then we fly out after that.
That's cool. Right on. All right. Well, again, Tom, thanks for carving out some time tonight. Thanks for your help with getting me some data on the races, and look forward to see you on the ground this summer. Thanks for everybody tuning in out there. And I forget who's next. I think the next one is either the week or week after, but we will plug it. Stay tuned for that and follow up with any comments, and I'll cue Tom into them if you have any questions, if you watch it post-mortem, and we can get back to you with any questions. So Tom with 603 Endurance puts on some amazing races and is expanding his portfolio up in New Hampshire. Thanks, man.
Thank you.